Hey, this is Piexplode. I'm gonna start first talking about where the Ubers community is at. I mean, if you're not a part of it yet, we're mostly hanging out in the Ubers room on Pokemon Showdown, and that's really where most of it goes down, not so much on the ladder. And joining on IRC as well, I can post the link to that in the description as well. So yeah, that's where most of everything happens. And this one is gonna be me talking about one of these Pokemon I've got up here. I mean, you can see it in the corner there, and you can also see it down here, Mega Gengar. Not a Pokemon I love. The amount of stuff that it makes not viable is quite something. So what does it do? Well, what you need to know is it has a fantastic speed tier. It's as quick as Mewtwo, and that means quicker than pretty much everything else unboosted, apart from Mewtwo Y and a couple of other very rare Pokemon such as, oh yeah, obviously the Oxus forms as well, but apart from that, pretty strong. It's got a move pool that lets it do what it wants. It's powerful and its bulk isn't nothing. Generally, the set you want to run is one using Focus Blast, Sludge Bomb, or Wave, depending on preference, really. Destiny Bond and Taunt, but there's quite a lot of variations on it. Hidden Power Fire lets you deal with Pokemon like Sizer and stuff, which love to Pursuit Trap, although it's not very common anymore, and it's slightly nicer and more reliable versus Ferrothorn. Shadow Ball's an option over Focus Blast, which hits Aegislash, but it loses out on a lot of other stuff, but it is reliable, and it's virtually exactly the same power in situations where they're equally effective against other Pokemon. And there is this one particularly evil set. She uses, I think, a set down to Durians, who were a team in the Ubers Premier League. Didn't do very well, the team, but good players in it. I think the set is mostly down to players such as Hack and Steven Jello for being who we owe this monstrosity to. The key moves are Reflect type, Will-O-Wisp, Taunt, and Rest, which seems quite odd, abusing a Pokemon with high speed, special attack, and generally below average bulk in such a situation, but you have to remember that it has the extreme trapping ability once it's Mega Evolved, and that is hell. It's an absolute stall destroyer of a set. I could probably find instances of it in action, but it's genuinely difficult to taking down Pokemon. Perhaps having to stall out PP, but nevertheless, Pokemon such as Arceus, Grass, and Fairy, other Pokemon of that kind. Tyranitar's the only Pursuit Trap which has any sort of way to cope with it, but that's a funny Pokemon anyway. If it does want to trap Tyranitar, then it trap Gengar. Then it carries Pursuit every time, and usually carries moves such as Stealth Rock, Low Kick, or Superpower, and such like. And it's worth noting that if it does carry Low Kick, well, actually it tends to carry Superpower if it's afraid of Reflect type Mega Gengar. But there's so many Pokemon that are weak to Mega Gengar, and that makes them just not usable. Don't use Chansey. Don't use Chansey, but then again, you do seem to notice between the ladder and the tournaments, tournament play acknowledges Mega Gengar, and that is very restrictive, whereas on the ladder, it seems that since it's a take it or leave it, sometimes you just lose on matchup, and they almost act as if it doesn't exist and can get very far with that attitude. Chansey has topped the ladder several times, so that is worth noting, but yeah, it's terrible threat. It does make the whole metagame a lot more matchup based. One other set which doesn't really see much use due to Gengar's lack of recovery options outside of Piexplode and Rest, is a Perish Trap set which has to abuse Perish Song, often abuses moves such as Phase Split, Substitute, Protect, Taunt, those sort of moves, which is a different ball game to other stuff, and it hasn't really seen any prominent usage. I don't know of any good teams with it on, but I'm sure Hat probably's got one. He's a great player, and he sort of came up with it, I think, but it was an obvious set. But whilst we're on the subject of Shadowtag, let's bring up two other Pokemon, Wobbuffet and Gothitelle, both of which struggle against certain matchups. Wobbuffet doesn't really do much to stall, but it can be quite abusive, as can Gothitelle. But Gothitelle is a lot less effective versus balance. They both have, well, no, only Gothitelle has several sets it can run, depending on what you need it to handle, from a Choice Specs or Choice Scarf set, which often abuses Trick, to a Calm Mind Rest set, which may often even be mono-attacking. Taunt is a great move on it, and Trick Room is probably the one that is the least deadweight versus Hyper Offense. So the question is, should we allow Shadowtag to be kept? It is, you have to appreciate, and Tournament Play is a lot more aware of this than the ladder, is that it really does totally affect the metagame. There's so many Pokemon that see much more limited use even though they're exceptional, such as Arceus, Grass, and Fairy. Some Pokemon that shouldn't ever see use due to it, such as Chansey. But the question is it really broken? Now you have to understand, Ubers is not like the tiers below it. It's not based on usage, and the concept does allow the most broken and powerful things to be in the metagame without them being suspected and banned. So you're allowed Rayquaza in the third generation of Ubers, and that thing's an absolute nuke. It's still not too terrible now. Opinions vary on it, but Stall still hates it. But I was speaking with Hack. I took a pacement of our conversation, but he mentioned how it does take the skill out of playing the tier, and it does ask two questions. Firstly, what skill is? Secondly, well, if something reduces skill, should it still be allowed? And I think Hugo Dugan's opinion is generally if it has a serious impact on tournament play, then it's worth getting rid of it, such as was with Swagger. But Ubers does not have a huge history of banning stuff. Apparently it was Generation 4 the last time a Pokemon got suspected in it. It really doesn't happen. Evasion is allowed. Hard to win with, certainly, but it is permitted as it's not seen as broken within Ubers anymore. What else is there to say about this? Well, yeah, Hack's opinion on skill, whilst I haven't really formed my own, and I think that that's a very deep question that does also need a lot of thought about to answer. He said skill's all about switching, which does affect both offense and stall. And he says essentially skill is within good switching. I mean, team building's important as well, and we know how Gengar affects that. But smart switching, double switching, bringing in the right Pokemon to weaken stuff to let yourself sweep what you need to stop the other opponent's Pokemon setting up on you. That's sort of what it's all about, really. Put simply, although the theory and the practice do have some distance, as it always does, Gengar and also Gothitelle and Wobbuffet even do reduce the skill of switching. I think Wobbuffet got to tell on their own wouldn't get banned. But oh bugger. Yeah, with Mecha Gengar in the mix as well, it does reduce the value of switching a lot, reduces the skill of the game. That's sort of why a lot of us feel that it should be banned. That's sort of all there is to it. I hate it. Excuse me if you're under 13, I don't care if that's explicit. So yeah, that's that. I'm not sure what. I could probably bring a piece of experience in the Uber's room that's interesting. Like, how about sweeps again? The entertaining world of the ladder we saw on the Ubers replay thread, which is, you really should check out the Ubers subforum as well as the Ubers analyses, both the working ones on site, which are being worked at on the forums, and the ones in the beta Pokedex, which I thoroughly recommend checking out. Bugger, where was I? Yeah, sweeps laddering. Within the Ubers replay thread, Fireburn, I think, posted several of Sweep battling with Mudkip on the ladder. He lost a couple 100 points, and I remember him the day after saying that he was surprised to find the Mudkip team in his team builder, and saw those replays and he had lost a couple 100 ladder points. So yeah, that's a bit of a story about Mudkip, but we like Mudkips. So yeah. Welcome to the Ubers metagame. It's kind of terrible. Or at least matchup based, so yeah. Anyway, that's 12 minutes of terror over. I hope not for you guys, but yeah. And these are some lovely pictures that my girlfriend made. And yeah, good night. And